Just me and the camera today and the plant because Arthur is off in Germany, so just us. And I was going to talk to him, so I'll talk to myself about how much a perfume is worth. And this is why I got an email this week, perfectly nice, asking me if I would make a perfume, if it would be possible to recreate a long lost perfume which was somebody's favourite. And this is quite difficult because I don't know what it smells like. What if somebody asked you, would you paint their portrait, but they didn't tell you what they looked like? That would be quite difficult. I'm just asking you to consider it theoretically. Of course, nobody would go to someone who probably wouldn't go to somebody they didn't know and ask if they could possibly do this. But if somebody sent me the instructions without a photograph, I'd probably still make quite a hash of something like that, even if I were a good artist. I get a list of notes, but the note says, if you know me, notes are not materials. Notes are the output. Materials are what we put in to get that. So if I get a list that says it has cherry blossom and mango and tobacco and bergamot, it might have tobacco and bergamot in there, but certainly hasn't got anything made from cherry blossom or mango, and that's something we'd have to create. Long lost perfumes, a lot of the time, well, they're long lost because some of the materials might have been discontinued or possibly banned for reasons of environmental damage or skin irritation they might have found to be causing a problem, so they've been taken off our list. And this is what I start to explain when somebody says, can you make this for me? Is I kind of build up to how much it might cost. Because first of all, I don't want to say, well, I probably can't actually do it. Even if you have a gas chromatograph, mass spectrometer, sorry, one of the lights just went off, it's fine. Even if you have a GCMS, they don't always get it exactly right. It's complicated, but they can tell you the individual molecules that might be in there to an extent, but some molecules weigh the same as other molecules, and so the machine doesn't know whether it was that or that. You have to have been able to smell it, and it might have been in a tiny quantity alongside something different. So these GCMS reports are not always as accurate as people imagine. Recreations need a perfumer to help. So I don't have a GCMS. A perfume is a long lost. It's actually not available to be analysed a lot of the time. So we're getting there. Plus, somebody who's going to be able to do this is probably charging more than minimum wage to do their job. And if they're going to spend a day working on something, even if they're earning, say, London living wage, that's £120 a day, to try and work on getting something correct, and you don't even know what it smells like. So it'd probably be a bit of backwards and forwards. How about this? Does this smell close? Does this is this somewhere along the lines that you were thinking of? And then if the person who's asking you to do this doesn't know a lot about perfume, then and they might say, oh, I need it a bit darker, so you put something like patchouli in it, and they go, oh no, it's come out all fresh. The long and the short of it is, if the person's not there with you to smell the things that they like, for you to put it together, it really can take an awful lot of time. So then when you say, it might cost you several £100s to have somebody sit there, even with you, go through this. If you want to book me by the hour and go through all these different materials we could be using, it could still take days, and that's going to be a lot of money. And then they say, I had no idea. I thought, you know, because Chanel, that one there, that's £150 a bottle. So surely you're cheaper than Chanel because you're just in a little studio in Hammersmith. So how can you cost as much as them? And this is why we look at it. It's not just the contents and it's not just the cost of a bottle. It's mostly the time it takes. So it's the time it takes for you to have got to the point where you know what all the things on your desk smell like. So if somebody says, I think it needs to smell a bit like that, you go, right, this one. And also you need the time. So you put all those hours in to get to the point where you think that you might be able to do this. And then you have the time it takes when you put things together in different proportions, how long that takes to get it close. That can also take quite a long time. So it's not the cost of what goes into the bottle a lot of the time, or even how fancy the bottle is. It's all those other things that it's the parts of the creative work which bring this aroma together to make the thing that you really want. And of course, the perfumers who made the original, they probably had 600 versions of it. No, not usually that much, to be honest, but maybe 50 different versions before the client said, yes, that's exactly what I want. So that's why I don't copy anybody else's perfumes, partly because it's not something I really want to do. I enjoy making my own. I enjoy starting from scratch. I mean, it's part of your skill set to be able to say, oh yeah, I think I could put that together. But that's what you do for practice. It's not what you do for a living if you enjoy the creative artisan part of it. That's one reason I don't. But the other reason, it would take hours and hours and hours and hours to get the exact thing that somebody wants. And you might not be able to do it because you can't get all the materials anyway. So it's a little bit unrewarding. Plus that person's then going to say, but I thought it would be about £50. And it won't be. It won't be. It might be £50 worth of materials, but it's going to be another goodness knows how many multiples of that actually to assemble the fragrance. Is all I was going to say about this. So I thought perhaps if people ask me, rather than me emailing them again, I might just put the video in and say, these are all the reasons why you'd imagine it might cost less than a bottle of perfume from down the shops to have something remade, but actually it's the time that somebody is going to put into it and paying them by the hour in order to be able to do it. People somehow imagine that you're going to cost less than somebody you'd hire in to paint your walls or a weedy garden to make a perfume. I think if you start valuing craftspeople's time, then you start to realize that it's not going to be that cheap. And I'm looking at some jewels that I bought from, I've got some that from people who made them. And, you know, if you were just to weigh the silver and say, well, the silver is only that much, compared with the amount of time that it takes the jeweler to create something special, it's not just the materials. We are guilty sometimes. Craftspeople are guilty of just looking at how much it cost them to buy them the thing. How much does it cost to buy 10 balls of wool to knit a scarf, without forgetting that it takes 3 days to knit a scarf. My mom used to paint for a living, and she would count the cost of the watercolor paper and something towards the cost of the paints, and maybe bring in a little bit of cost of her brushes wearing out, and then charge £7.50 for a birthday card that she'd done specially. And I would point out to her that While she was doing this, she was actually paying somebody to clean her house for her, and she's paying maybe 10 times more to have her house cleaned than she was earning to paint the picture. So we're very bad. It was all right. She had a teaching pension. You know, she wasn't starving. She didn't need to do it for the money. I think that's another thing. Sometimes if people think, well, maybe they shouldn't be charging. Maybe we undervalue ourselves. But you know, you can let me know what you think about this. I should probably also mention the thing, economies of scale, for people who are thinking of going into this, maybe making things for a living. Economies of scale, it's a term used in business, and it's what you get when you scale up. So if you are cooking a little cake, it takes you, an hour to mix it all up. The butter and the sugar and the flour and the eggs, if you're not vegan, maybe you spent £5 on buying all of those things. So what's the cake actually going to cost you? £10? £25 if you add in your own time. And maybe you've forgotten the cost of the electricity. £30? And part share of the oven that's going to fall apart eventually. £35? If you make 6 cakes at the same time, top shelf, mid shelf, base shelf. No, that's perfume. Top, middle, bottom shelf. You can make 6 cakes. The materials will cost a little bit more, but then you can probably get your cost of cake down to £10 a cake. So put it simply, that's what economies of scale are. If you make a bigger batch, then it's still the same amount of time that you put in, the materials more, but you can then start to save a little bit of money if you have your bottle printed. So there's my Vienn's Confession bottle. If I had that printed, I just had one printed, it'd be like £500 for the setup cost, plus £1.20 for a bottle. So it would be £501.20 for this. If I had 500 printed, then it would be £2.20 per bottle, because the £500 setup cost would be divided amongst all 500 bottles. So you can make an economy. You can say nobody's going to get one bottle printed, but I could theoretically save, £498 per bottle if, what's that? A lot. If I got 500 done at the same time, rather than just one. But do I need 500? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. It's not a cost saving. It's not good for cash flow if you only really need one. But it would be over long term if you're going to sell 500 of them. Things that we need to think of, and that's the reason why when somebody is making 10,000 bottles of perfume, their cost per bottle can be really low, because they're paying a perfume X hundred, X thousand perfumer to do it, but that's divided out amongst all those 10,000 bottles. So suddenly the perfume is just like 50p a bottle. Whereas if you're paying a perfumer to do one bottle, they're £5,000 per bottle. This is what, don't smack the microphone, sorry. This is what we have to bear in mind if we're thinking about actually scaling up, making 1 or 2 or 10 or 50 or 100 or 500 bottles of perfume. Things to consider, and if you're a client, if you're coming to a perfumer and saying, can I have 1 bottle? Bear in mind, you're paying for all of the time that a perfumer would normally spend to make a new fragrance, which might otherwise be going into 100 or 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 bottles. So dividing out the costs, it's things that management accountants do for you, but you would work out what's the sensible number to do in terms of how much do you have, How much money do you have? How much time you want to spend on this? How many do you think that you really need? And if it's just for you, you probably don't need more than 10. But if you're going to sell it, do you want to have 1,000? Do you want to have 5,000? Can you afford 10,000? The more you make, the more the cost comes down because you're dividing it out into cost per bottle. And that's why if somebody wants one bottle, which is vaguely similar to something that used to be made, you know, somebody used to sell 10,000 a year, that's why the cost for one seems very high compared with what you used to go to the shops and buy it for. Wasn't really intending to be a maths for business people session, but it sort of is. But you get your head around that, you start to understand why if you say, well, I've got £100, will you make me a perfume? The perfume is probably going to go, sorry. You can always come to a class and make your own. Anyway, yeah, that's what I get up to when Arthur's not here and I'm just talking to the phone.